Hello there, friends, and welcome to another episode of the 360 Experience Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Braheem, and today I will be talking with Phil Treadwell. Now, Phil brings a wide variety of experience in the mortgage and real estate industry to this conversation. He's been in the mortgage industry for over 19 years. He is a podcast host of the Mortgage Marketing Expert podcast. He is a national public speaker and a mindset coach. Today, we're going to talk about everything from marketing to having the proper mindset in today's marketplace to the common denominators that he finds in the people that he interviews, which I think is a very interesting perspective, given that he's interviewed so many of the nation's top producing loan originators over the last 5 years or so. So I am looking forward to this conversation with Phil. He's an incredibly articulate guy and a great teacher, and someone who I really enjoy talking with. I was on his show recently, and it was just such a joy to be a guest on his show. He's an outstanding interviewer, and I'm sure he's going to do a wonderful job in a role reversal as the guest in today's episode of the 360 Experience. Before I get to introducing Phil to you, I'd like to remind you that this show thrives and survives on your subscriptions and on your likes and your forwards and your comments. So if you're watching this on YouTube, please make sure, if you like the episode, to comment on it. Please forward it to anybody that you think would benefit from it. If you are listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please make sure that you give us a like if you enjoy the episode. And above and beyond all, please make sure that you subscribe, because the more subscribers we have, the easier it is for me to get other outstanding guests into the show. As always, check the show notes to the episode broadcast, where we have special additional information that you will find to be valuable. And without further ado, I welcome Phil Treadwell to the 360 Experience. Phil, how are you, man?
Man, I'm doing great. Happy to be here. I'm excited to have a cool conversation.
Me too. I'm happy that you made that flight from Denver yesterday that you were telling me about before we started recording.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a late night. Traveling always has its curveballs, and this one was about a 3.5 hour delay, but we made it back in one piece.
Travel is tough right now, man. There's oh my goodness, just got done doing a retreat in Europe. And we had all kinds of travel mishaps. So I definitely can feel you, and I'm glad you got back safely.
I appreciate that.
So, I want to dive right in, and then we can maybe backfill a little bit of story on your career and all that kind of stuff in a little bit. But right now, what are you seeing right now in the market? You're in Denver speaking, you're a podcast host, you're in the mortgage business. You're pretty tapped in, and I'd love to know what you're seeing that people are doing effectively right now in the origination business based upon the people you're talking to.
That's a great question. And I think that is the question. At the end of the day, there's really two things. The first one is people that are growing, that are taking advantage of opportunities in this market, because there's opportunities in every market, is they're taking massive action. This isn't a time to take your foot off of the gas or wait for something to change with supply or the market or whatever. They're taking massive action. And I think that that's really important for people to realize, is if you'll go out and do something, you're going to get some results. There's never a situation where doing nothing is better than doing something, even if you fail, even if it doesn't work out the way you want. Because again, if you do nothing, you get nothing. But if you do something, you may get some results, or you may take an L, but at least you have an opportunity to learn something. You're able to dial that in or get some type of a feedback. And the second piece is they have something more than just the same old offer. They have the same old, service level. They have an actual product. They're taking their services, they're taking the value, they're taking their knowledge, and they're really putting it into a package. And they have kind of a unique value offer in what they do. Because we all know that a mortgage, right, that piece of paper that gets filed that, puts the lien on the property, that's pretty much the same everywhere you go. So what differentiates one loan officer from the next, one lender from the next? And that's really taking those services and putting them into a product that's tangible for people. And they have something different. They have a different type of conversation. They're not just saying, they're in the mortgage business, and people ask about the market, or ask about rates. They say, I have a mortgage practice that helps people build wealth with real estate or create financial security, or they have something specific that they can turn to of all the things they provide, all of the services they do, and they have a very finite thing that they're selling. And it makes it that much easier for people to wrap their minds around.
I'm so glad we started here because, I've been actually playing around and preparing some content for one of our upcoming retreats around the topic of building a brand. I think that's not something that gets talked a lot about. We refer to it as other things, of course, a unique selling proposition, a value proposition, but I think it extends beyond that. It's not only what you do that makes you unique, but how are you putting that out in the marketplace to where you are differentiating yourself from your competition? And I think that that's really what you're talking about. So let's drill down and peel the layers of that onion back a little further. So what are a couple of unique value propositions, i.e. brands, or maybe we can get into how to turn that into a brand in a moment, that you're seeing that's working effectively right now?
Yeah. So the first thing that comes to mind is just what you said. When people talk about a unique value offer, too often they think it has to be something unique that no one else can do. And that's really not true. It's how do you show up and do what you do in a unique way? The individual loan officer, the individual originator, that's the uniqueness. And it really starts with understanding why you do what you do. What happened in your past that or didn't happen in your past that really drove you to want to help people in a certain way, or to want to do this business at all. And when you really turn that into your uniqueness, people see that passion. People see why you're doing it, as opposed to just collecting a paycheck or wanting to build a business for the purposes of building a business. And it really starts with, we all have access to certain levels of service. We have certain ways that we communicate with our borrowers, with our referral partners. We have different products that provide, like obviously a mortgage coach and a total cost analysis, or some type of a loan comparison, or your monthly wealth digest. There's lots of things where we spend too much time listing off the features, and we need to articulate benefit. People don't care about those things. What they do care about is a solution that it provides to a problem they have, or a benefit that they provide. So the more that you can take those and put that into, like you said, a brand or a specific offering of what you do, that changes things. A great example off the top of my head is Ryan Grant with the Art of Homeownership. He's done an incredible job of taking the things that he does, and both before you apply, both during the transaction, and as you continue to work with them after that individual home has been closed, or that loan is done. And so that's what people need to do. And the people that are having results are doing just that.
Yeah, I think what RG, so let's kick around a few names here, and you can feel free to add anybody that that I'm not mentioning that can really cement this point home. So what RG's done a great job of is he's taken, as you said, these various components before you talk to and before you do their loan, when you first engage them, during the process, post-closing. But the key thing is that he's encapsulated them into a philosophy that he's figured out how to present and articulate in a way that creates separation, that creates uniqueness, and as you articulated quite beautifully, that solves problems that people have. So he's identified problems and figured out unique ways to solve those problems. Now, I think that a challenge, Phil, with a lot of originators is that when you hit them with that question of what makes you unique, their eyes glass over. And a lot of people start to really become self-deprecating. They start to say, well, I actually don't do anything really that special. I'm not really that. And that's all just a story, because I think at the end of the day, each one of us has a gift to give, but the identification of that gift and learning how to utilize it in a way that is of service to someone is the key thing. And I think it goes, first and foremost, I think the first place that an originator needs to look is what comes natural to them, what's easy to them, what is joyful for them. Those are all clues to the things that make you unique. So for me, as an example, for whatever reason, I'm pretty good at stringing words together. I mean, scripting has always been my strength. So I leveraged that as an originator, and I really polished and created a really strong presentation at point of sale to where I knew that if somebody was going to be talking to somebody else, they're probably not going to sound as good as me, because I invested a lot of time into really thinking through strategically how to educate someone, how to explain things in a way that was digestible, and how to add value to them in that capacity. I know other originators who are outstanding when it comes to being networkers. Like, they are really good, like Steve Grossman, who I just had on the show about 30 days ago. He's the best I've ever seen at it. All he's doing is taking a step back and saying, all right, what comes easy to me? What am I good at? What am I naturally gifted at? Some people are extremely detail oriented and analytical, and they know how to structure files. Other people are naturally extroverted and are really good at building relationships. People like RG and say myself are really good at articulating our value proposition to the person where they can really comprehend it. But let's look at Josh Metal as an example. So Josh, another good buddy of mine, like, he realized a long time ago now, like 12, 14 years ago, that there was a hole in the market that wasn't being filled. And it was the hole of people being able to get loans if they were physicians. And he created an entire brand by researching the products that would be most appropriate for somebody who was just out of graduate school and had a lot of student loans, that's starting their own medical practice. And he figured out how to match product with a need and then create an entire marketing strategy around it. So I'm going to hit pause there and see if you want to add further to what I just shared. But what I'd like to make sure that you hit on is this topic of there's nothing about me that is special, and debunking that.
Yeah, I love what you said so much, because everyone has a uniqueness, something that they enjoy. And you talk a lot about having joy, being at play, the things about us that really kind of light us up. I like to think it's a zone of genius for everyone. They all have that thing. I know for me, you just had Rene Rodriguez on not too long ago. He's a close friend of mine and been a mentor. We established that for me, I'm a strategist. I'm really good at helping bridge the gap from where somebody wants to be and where they are. And that's really just a decision and a strategy. So a lot of times, working with our clients, or even from the origination perspective, a lot of people want financial security, or they want stability, or they want to just become a homeowner. And maybe they either don't know how, or there are some obstacles in the way. So that's how we created our unique value offer, was showing them, here are different strategies that we can help you accomplish what it is you want to accomplish. And part of that is coming from my why. I like to help people achieve and execute at the level they're capable of. It's not typically a lack of desire, the reason people don't hit those things. It's either a knowledge thing or an action thing. And it doesn't have to be super profound either. As we talk to a lot of people and we help them kind of uncover why they do what they do, and what they are passionate about and what they're good at, what comes naturally to them. Sometimes it's, again, part of an experience that they had when they were younger. An example I use a lot is, I had a loan officer and I just asked her, I said, why do you do what you do? What's passionate about this for you? And she said, I really want to help people create financial security. And I said, that's exciting. That's awesome. A lot of people need that. What about that is significant? And we kind of went through this exercise. And what finally came out was that she was one of 3 kids to a single mom who moved around a lot because they didn't have a lot of security financially. So they weren't able to stay in one place for very long. That led to not having a lot of friendships or extracurricular activities and things that they wanted to do. But at some point when she was a teenager, her mom found a job where she was able to buy a house. And that's really where the good memories from her childhood came from, was they stayed in one place, they created friendships, they were able to get into extracurriculars and all of these things, even from family memories in that home, that changed her life in a positive way. So as she got older, she immediately went into working at a bank, and eventually to a mortgage company where she started doing loans, because she experienced the same thing in her life with her husband. Is when they were able to buy a home, it changed the trajectory of their personal finances. So whenever we repackage that in a way where we let both her referral partners and clients know, and she was able to articulate that message that I want to help people create financial security through home ownership. And part of that reason is because, and gives a little version of her story, people see that differently. Here's the tools that we're going to provide you to do these things. It's now a specific offer that is unique to her. It's not that another loan officer couldn't potentially do that, but can they do it in that way? Or are they even saying it in that way? And I say that for people because it doesn't have to be some profound skill. It doesn't have to be some profound thing. It can just be you showing up and letting people know, this is why I do this, and this is how I'm going to help you do the same thing.
Yeah, beautifully articulated. And I do think that what you just said right there is so critically important. It's like, let's not make this too hard, and let's not, let great be the enemy of good. And something you said earlier that I want to hit on is that there really isn't, at the end of the day, any failure when you're taking action. There's only results that you were looking for or learnings that you can glean from.
Yes.
If you don't have success with the action that you've taken, there's a lot of clues that are left behind as to what to do differently. I mean, I'm sure you've heard the old, phrase of Thomas Edison, saying to his constituents when they said, this isn't going to work, creating electricity or cultivating electricity for the light bulb that we've tried 20,000 times and it hasn't worked. And he said, nonsense. We have 20,000 times that we know it doesn't work. We're that much closer to figuring out how it does work, right? So I think that the fear of failure, I'll tell you a quick story, just to go off track for a minute. So I was just in Italy with my wife, with my director of logistics for my company, and we're facilitating this couples retreat for 12 days. And Andrea, she's from Costa Rica. She speaks Spanish, but she doesn't speak any Italian. My wife doesn't speak any Italian. The three of us took Italian lessons for 4 months. And when we got to Italy, I watched two entirely different scenarios unfold over the course of those 12 days. My wife has a perfectionistic side of her to where she's timid about speaking in this particular example unless she can get it right, unless she knows how to conjugate the verb correctly, unless she knows how to exactly string the sentence together. Andrea, on the other hand, just really didn't care. She just went for it. And I remember one night I was sitting there listening to her talking to this bus driver, and I speak a decent amount of Italian. So I'm listening to them talk, and I'm realizing not only is she mixing in a bunch of Spanish and a few English words, she's also just flat out not saying certain things correctly. And she just didn't care.
Right.
Because she was engaged, and in the process she was learning. And over the course of those 12 days, her Italian got so much better than my wife's, because my wife was holding back and not engaging in conversing with people because she didn't want to get it wrong. And I think that there's something to be learned there about the process of being a great originator. I guarantee you that Ryan Grant tried a whole bunch of things before he figured it out. I mean, you have to put yourself on the field and you have to play the game and learn as you go. So much of it is learned in the trenches by making mistakes, making course adjustments, and putting yourself in a position where you can grow with the process. So, okay, so you interview a lot of people. How long have you had your podcast for?
We've had our podcast for a little over 5 years. We launched June 1st of 2018.
And for everybody listening, obviously that you are, or you wouldn't be hearing me say this, you need to listen to Phil's podcast. He's an excellent host. I really enjoyed being on your show. It was such an easy process for me as a guest. And I think the world of your show. So I really want to give props to you. Yeah, you're welcome. So you have, over the course of 5 years, interviewed a lot of people. And I would imagine as a result of that, you've learned a lot of things that people are doing right and a lot of strategies that people are exercising. And I'm sure that you've seen some common denominators. What are a few common denominators that you've uncovered when you think back to some of your previous episodes of what successful people are doing besides that of taking action? Any specific tactics that you'd like to share?
100%. And I love it. This is almost a softball because it's 100% in my wheelhouse. When I started the podcast, you're exactly right. You were the second guest I had ever interviewed, and we didn't know each other at that time. And I was so excited about the podcast because I knew I was going to have an opportunity to learn and be able to just get better as a human, whether people listened or didn't listen. It was just a huge opportunity to get in that sphere of influence of folks. And through that, there are a ton of common denominators. And I'm in the process of finishing a book called What the Uncommon Have in Common, because uncommon, really highly successful people, not just in business, but in their life and in their relationships and in their health, there's some common denominators. And the first one is really what you alluded to earlier around embracing the fear of failure. Failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is a part of success. And I love how you framed that. Real failure, there's not really any failure in taking action, because when you have a growth mindset, all it is an opportunity to learn something to help get you where you want to go. But we've kind of been trained by a lot of formal academia that success is over here and failures over here, and we have to decide which way we want to go, like it's a linear path, because you can't fail every quiz, fail every test. Even if you learned everything that you got wrong in that world, you're still a quote unquote failure. But almost every person that I've ever interviewed and been coached by or mentored by understands that those are the opportunities and the building blocks of how you become successful, so long as you learn those things in there. So that's an important one. And I think a lot of people kind of overlook it and like, well, I'm not necessarily afraid of failing. I'm okay failing. And I would challenge him that that may be true, but a lot of times we're afraid of people seeing us fail. We don't necessarily want them to know that we've taken an L or we've had a setback or there's something that hasn't worked out how we wanted. And we have in our minds a lot of times that to be an elite professional, you have to succeed or get results from an extremely high percentage of the things that you do. Like 80, 90% of the time, you've got to have those wins. But you look at other elite professionals. The metaphor I always like to use is of baseball. If you're a professional baseball player at any level and you have a 200 batting average, you're probably playing AA or AAA baseball. Now, if you have a 300 batting average, you're for sure in the major leagues and you might even be an all-star. And if you have a 400 batting average, you're Ted Williams. You're one of the greatest of all time. Okay, well, to be one of the best in the world in the major leagues at what you do, a 300 batting average means 70% of the time they fail. They're not getting on base. They're grounding out. They're flying out. They're striking out, whatever. Okay, so to be the best in that arena, you're still, quote unquote, failing 70% of the time. And it's not behind closed doors. It's in front of 40,000 people that are calling you everything but the name your mom gave you. And then you have to go and do it again in 20, 25 minutes and in a couple of innings. And I think as mortgage professionals, we have a lot to learn from that, because you go out and do it and you need to learn what happened, because every time they're at bat and they're not getting the result that they want, they learn something about the pitcher. They learn something about the defense and the outfield and the infield and whatever's happening around them, so that they can come back the next time and execute at a higher level. And it doesn't take 50, 60, 80, 90% of the time to be one of the best. And I think that that's where it ties into that taking massive action, is realizing that failure is a part of the process. So that's really kind of the first, bullet point there. The other thing I think that we really need to pay attention to, we alluded to as well, which is people pay for solutions to their problems. And it doesn't necessarily mean monetarily. There's a lot of conversation around videos and content and social media. Well, in today's day and age, people are consuming content in a lot of different times of their day and times of their life. And so I always like to tell people, does it pass the DMV test? In the state of Texas, we have something called the godforsaken DMV. Now, that's not what's on the sign, but that's sure what we experience. You have to show up at like 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. So when they open, they give you a number or a time to come back hours later, and you're there for a couple more hours. It's a whole terrible institution and experience. Well, I share that because when you're in a moment like that, or you're in a doctor's waiting room forever, and you open up social media, no one's saying, man, I hope I see a definition of amortization, or man, I hope I see how many loans that a loan officer has closed last month. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with someone doing that on social media, but what I'm saying is the problem that someone has in that moment is they want to escape their environment. They want to be entertained. They want to be informed. They want something different. And so they're going to pay you with their attention to solve that problem. And really, really high performing people, successful people understand this concept that we all have different small and large problems throughout our life that we can solve for people. And that's going to create the attention that you need. It's going to create the network that you need, which creates those opportunities in business. And I think the last piece of this, and I'll turn it back over, is kind of this third bullet point is realizing what business that we're actually in. And I heard Ed Milet give a talk around some of this stuff, and he, use the example of McDonald's. Say, what business is McDonald's in? Right? You hear answers of fast food and convenience, or you get somebody like, hey, they're in the real estate business. Well, they are that too. They actually own more real estate than anybody on planet Earth, except for the Catholic Church, which I think is kind of interesting. But the business they're actually in is love and happiness. Tony Robbins says our two biggest fears are being enough and being loved. Are we good enough? Are we smart enough? Do we have enough money? That feeds into our biggest fear of not being loved or being appreciated or being included. And so they understood that because those are people's biggest fears, the way that we can grow a business is make them happy. Their best-selling meal is a happy meal. They even created a clown, which made kids happy until Stephen King ruined that for everybody. And the best-selling product that McDonald's has is Coca-Cola, a Coke and a smile. So how does that relate to mortgage? We're not in the mortgage business. We're not even in the real estate business. We're in the business of making people happy, making them feel loved, and having an environment that they can love their family. And how do you do that? By solving problems that they have. Because nobody wants a mortgage. No one wants a big fat mortgage. Give me the biggest mortgage you have, the biggest payment that you can give me. Nobody wants that. They want what the mortgage provides for them. And so to kind of tie that together, really understanding failure is part of the process and learning from it, understanding what people pay for in those solutions and what business we're really in. Those are three themes, whether it was directly or indirectly, that almost every guest I've ever had understood, and that's why they've grown.
There's a lot to unpack there. That was really wonderful. I think at the end of the day, I would add that a part of everyone's unique selling proposition that I know that's successful is that they care, right? So like if people feel that you truly care, like when I used to meet with a client, I'd spend a long period of time with them. This is before I transitioned into having my team meet with them. But even then, I still made sure that my team was spending a significant amount of time with them, patiently going through all their questions, making sure they felt safe, making sure that they were making a wise and educated choice on the largest indebtedness that they'd ever take on in their life. And they could feel that caring. And as we enter into this age of artificial intelligence and the processes become more and more streamlined and they become less and less personal, there is a tremendous opportunity to be different in that way by just caring a little bit more and taking the time to be patient with people. Now you referenced people want to be entertained on Instagram. It's funny you brought this up because just I think maybe 2 days ago or so I was scrolling through, and it's just like I can't even believe how many mortgage professionals are doing reels on Instagram. And quite frankly, most of them aren't very good. And they're not very good because everybody's following the same formula. Everybody's got the little, words at the bottom that are popping up. Everybody's talking about the same thing. And this is the thing that I think that people need to start really conditioning themselves to be thinking about, which is, do I want to be like everybody else or do I want to be unique? Do I want to be different? And sometimes being unique and different means going out of the box, being extremely creative. Mark Bowie, who's a good friend of mine and a really great loan officer, does amazing stuff on Instagram. Have you ever checked out Mark's Instagram? Do you follow him?
I haven't. I will though.
Check it out. I'm not gonna say anything. Make sure that you watch the reels where he's doing movie parodies.
Oh, nice.
There's a reason that he's got 73,000 followers, okay? Because he does things differently than everyone else. And I think that that's one of the keys to marketing is, really looking at what everybody else is doing and saying, I'm not going to do that because I don't want to fall into the same category as everybody else. Your metaphor of baseball is certainly near and dear to my heart. I'm a huge baseball fan, and I've always used the subject matter of baseball as the metaphor for your batting average, which is your conversion rate at point of sale and scripting. And yes, I mean, a good hitter goes into the film room or onto the iPad in the dugout in between innings to look and see what pitch beat him. Looks to see what the tendencies are of the pitcher, really works on the areas in the strike zone that they're not hitting, getting that hip turned more quickly so they can hit the inside pitch, dropping the hands and all of that kind of stuff. It's not just by accident that a great hitter becomes a great hitter. And to your point, a great hitter is somebody, who's, we're only talking about a fraction. We're talking about an extra one hit for every 10 times up that makes a difference between somebody, like you said, who's not in the big leagues and somebody who's an all-star. I don't know if you know this as a sidebar, you mentioned Ted Williams. This is a great baseball trivia question, which is, who was the last guy to hit 400? Ted Williams. But did he win the MVP?
Right.
The answer is no, because that's the same year that Joe DiMaggio hit in 56 straight. And the writers liked DiMaggio better, and they gave the MVP to him. Can you believe the last guy to hit 400 didn't win the MVP? That's pretty crazy.
So crazy.
Right?
So crazy.
So just to summarize real quick, what I'm hearing you say is get on the field, get the repetitions, learn from anything that doesn't generate the desired result you were looking for. That's where growth occurs. We're talking about being different. And we're talking about really understanding that it continually takes action. There's just so many people who plan to sell and plan to sell and plan to sell, and they never get out there and actually sell. So let's dive a little bit more into marketing now. What are some of your core philosophies on marketing, and what do you see that is effective in marketing in the origination game?
Great question. Something I say a lot is effective marketing is the balance of trust and attention. I could light myself on fire and put it on social media and probably get a lot of attention, but that doesn't mean I've created any trust that people want to do business with me. But we have a lot of really, really good professionals that are capped in the amount of business that they're going to do because not enough people know who they are and what they do. So that is a extremely important thing for people to kind of balance the two. When it comes to social media, I think we need to get off of this thought that I'm going to put out content on social media to, quote, create leads. Yes, you can, and yes, you will, but being on social media and putting content is not about creating leads. The main two reasons that social media is effective in helping people build business is, one, it's social proof. If 5 years ago I said, you need to use Ryan Grant or you need to use, whoever for your loan, they're a rock star, they're going to create a strategy, they're, going to get you done, whatever. 5 years ago, if I referred someone, that person just used that loan officer. Today, they go look them up on social media. They go Google them. When was the last time we went to a restaurant or to a movie or bought a product without at least kicking the tires online? And I think people that for so long have developed an incredible database, an incredible source of referrals, are overlooking the power of social media and helping them increase conversion because they're not seeing how many people are trying to go find them and aren't seeing anything or seeing very little. So that's the first thing, is it's to solidify referrals and increase your conversion from social proof. The second reason is so that you can go engage with other people. If you want to close more loans, you need more leads. To create more leads, you need to start more conversations. And in my opinion, the easiest way to start more conversations is to go engage in other people's content. There's a basic 3-step marketing formula. Who's your target market? Who's your audience? Who are you going after? What problem do you solve for them? What value are you trying to provide? And the third is, what's the most effective medium to solve that problem for that audience? So from a marketing perspective, that's how you can figure out what to do, but you should know who your target audience is. Instead of just putting videos out there and hoping that they see them, put videos out there, go engage with your audience in a non-salesy, non-spammy way of, they were on the lake for 4th of July or whatever. Hey, I taught my son to ride a wave runner or whatever. Those will lead to conversations. But if someone comments on your post or your video and you don't have a clue who they are, it's the first thing you do. You go look at their profile to see who they are. Well, if you're out there engaging with people and they're not familiar with you, they're going to come look at your profile and see your content. All of these things turn into conversations and turn into leads and doing more deals. But we have people that are, posting some videos and, to your point, doing them poorly or doing them like everyone else is doing, and they don't understand why the phone's not ringing, why people aren't, beating down their door to want to work with them. So you have to tie all these pieces together from a marketing perspective. Is on social media, realize what it's actually for. And something you said about trends. I was in Vegas about a week and a half ago for Neil Dinger's Forward event. And there was a lady up there named Lauren Bostic. And frankly, I'd never heard of her. I guess a lot of women know who she is. She's a big influencer and has, a couple million followers. She said something I wrote down that I thought was super profound around trends, trending videos or trending audios. She said, I tell people to stay away from trends because it makes you look like a follower. You need to go do something that makes you look like a leader, that makes you look different. And that's exactly what you said, is go find a unique way, go find something different to do. Marketing is about getting people's attention. Sales is what makes them a customer. That's a different skill set. Right now, we want to get them into our ecosystem. We want to get their attention. So many people think they're marketing and they're just trying to sell their products. They're just trying to sell a loan. Go out and create entertaining content, informative content, solve some problems for people. That will create conversations and lead to it. But on a very basic level in marketing, you've got first to know who is your target market. What problems do they have? What type of shows do they watch? What hobbies do they have? And then figure out how you can add value to those people, figure out that message. And the third step is find places that you can go give that message to those people, and the rest will take care of itself.
Yeah, it's the long game too. I mean, I think that a lot of originators are very impatient in today's social media marketing game, which I want to talk about other forms of marketing in a second, because I think that there's some missed opportunities that are happening right now. But in the social media marketing game, it's so heavily saturated that we have to understand that it's going to take time. And to your point, what we're really doing is we're building a following. That's not to be confused with converting.
That's right.
Now, there are certainly strategies once you have that following. I was talking to Mark Bowie's social media marketing consultant the other day, in fact, and one of the things that they're working on now is, now that he has the huge, massive following, that's the people that are kind of, residing and sitting at the top of the funnel. And how do you get them to come through the funnel to you? Okay, so once you've built this audience of people, because to your point, you're providing engaging, valuable, and value, like, let's establish something. Valuable can mean a lot of things. I think a lot of loan originators think only of, and this is where they get caught up, and a lot of them don't even do any marketing on social media because they think, well, I'm not really good at being Ryan Grant. I'm not really good at being the educator that articulates so clearly to people. So then they shy away from it. But that's not the only way that you provide value. I mean, it's valuable to entertain people, to your point. It's valuable to make them think. It's valuable to make them laugh. It's valuable to make them feel good. So that broadens the scope of content. When I look at some of the reels that I have on my social media marketing page, which I'm just kind of getting started with it. And to be very honest with you, I don't really love doing that stuff. I'm not a big social media guy, but I know that I got to be out there. It's interesting when you watch the statistics. What are the things that people are watching? And a lot of times it's not the things that you think. I mean, I put out a reel on meditation, and has I think 5,000 views. It's one of my highest viewed videos.
Right.
What does that have to do with mortgages? Nothing. What does it have to do with being a human being that is trying to cultivate and find presence in today's crazy world? Everything.
That's right.
So let's not forget that value. I think a way I'd want to summarize this, Phil, is I think what happens is that people define value in such a narrow scope and forget that the only thing that matters is the person who's watching it or seeing it. It's their definition of value that matters.
Exactly
That's the
right.
thing that matters the most. And I found this out a long time ago when it came to database management. I used to send things to my past client database that had nothing to do with mortgages that would generate a bunch of phone calls to me saying, "Hey, thank you so much. This is really valuable. This homeopathic recipe for, kids that have colds under the age of 5." And 8, 10, 12 parents call me up to thank me. I just won. I just bought brain cells. I just made an impact. I provided value based upon their definition of value. And once you have this sphere out there of people who perceive you as somebody who brings value to them, now you can start to bring them down the funnel by offering an online seminar for first-time home buyers, or when rates drop, making sure they know that. And then that's when the conversions will take place. But I think the social media marketing game, based upon what I'm learning, and I'm no expert on it, is about building this big base of people who you have some influence over because you provide value to them. What are the common denominators of top originators in the mortgage business? They're well scripted. They have a system for marketing themselves that generates leads. They manage an effective database, and they have strong referral partner relationships. The other common denominator of many great originators is that they have a business and life plan, a roadmap, a guide for them to achieve success, and they have an ally, a coach, who assists them in the successful implementation of that plan. Performance Experts Performance Accelerator private one-on-one 1-year coaching program is now accepting applications. This is my company, and these are my certified coaches that specialize in the mortgage business. Go to www.mortgagecoachingnow.com and click on Get a Coach, or go to the show notes and click on the link that's provided in this episode. Now let's get back to the show.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't even know that it necessarily has to be a big base as much as it's a group of people, to your point, that find value in what you're saying. And it could be, something as simple as when we talked about people feeling like they're enough. So everybody wants to give their opinion. I was doing a webinar for a company earlier, specifically on video content. And one of the ladies was saying that of all her videos that she's put out, I think she'd done 15 or 20, all of them had about the same amount of views that were more business related or things of that nature. But she had one video that had, same thing, 5 or 10,000 views, that was around, she just figured out in her dishwasher that top rack, it will clip up and down. And just people just thought that was exciting and entertaining or funny that she didn't know or whatever. And I think that's where we do miss the boat when it comes to content. Is you could put out a video of, these are my 3 reasons why Coke is better than Pepsi, or why I like going to the lake over the beach, and give people an opportunity to relate to something, because you hit the nail on the head. Value is in the eye of the beholder. What do they think about the content? And so many people miss this because they're like, well, but I want to attract people that are, wanting to buy homes or investing in real estate. Agreed, but that's not something outside of our industry that most people think about or do on a daily basis. But here's the cool thing. We all know 10, 12, 15 people, give or take, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little less. We know them really, really well. And then each one of those people know 6, 8, 10, 12, 15 people really, really well. They need to know what you do, but they're going to connect with you because of who you are. Those things that we don't think about in our lives that are kind of funny or anecdotal, we need to be sharing those out in the world. What are our hobbies? There's a phrase, there's magic in the mundane. The things that we think most people don't care about are ironically the exact opportunities we have to connect with someone on a real human and personal level. Like, oh my gosh, I was this days old whenever I figured out that my dishwasher rack would go up and down. And so I 100% agree. Having those people that are just in your ecosystem, that are in your following, and then offering things out. They may know someone who's in the market. Maybe they're in the market. Maybe they want to attend a webinar or a class or have a free download or any number of 100 things that you can then offer those people or the people that they know.
Let's identify some things just off the cuff here that that are topics. So I think that before we do, there's a misunderstanding that if I am putting content out there that is not related to me being a mortgage expert, that I'm somehow going to cheapen myself. And I think that's just a false statement. And I think I proved that, frankly, time and again as an originator and in the days of Loan Toolbox, when we used to have this thing called U Magazine that was a electronic magazine that we wrote a ton of content for. And it would be interesting to see on the click-throughs what topics got clicked through on the most. So let's just identify what are some topics that don't have anything to do with mortgages that are valuable to be putting out there, that will buy brain cells and will have people feeling, because I want to make sure everybody hears this, that what we're trying to create here is reciprocity. So if we add value, natural human nature is that they're going to want to reciprocate.
Right.
And the way that they're going to want to reciprocate is oftentimes, not always, to reward you by utilizing you for your services. So let's go back and forth, play a little game here. You get to go first. What's a topic unrelated to mortgages that you think would be valuable to put out there?
I think DIY projects, do-it-yourself projects. And just a short story on that is whenever my wife and I were moving to Texas about 5 years ago, we had this big covered back porch, and I wanted to do a fire pit. And I'm like, do I want to buy one or do I want to do it? And I was searching around. Well, the best site that I found for these really cool DIY projects, and he had all the details of the materials and the instructions, and he embedded a YouTube video showing how to do it. He was an insurance agent. It was one of the best content marketing plays I'd ever seen. And one of my best friends owns an insurance company, so that's where I get my insurance. But when you talk about reciprocity, I actually referred people to this insurance agent because I thought it was so cool that he had these DIY projects on there. So that's the first one I'm going to say is DIY projects. Just because I don't know of anybody that isn't at least interested in, these little cool things you can do in your house or your life, or the hacks, if you will, that we all love.
I'm glad I let you go first because you got us out of the starting blocks beautifully. That's a great story. I'm going to go food.
Ooh, that's a great one.
Cooking or restaurants. I used to write my own newsletter for years, once a quarter. The comments that I got more of than any other topics in my newsletter were I put a cooking recipe in there every quarter. And when we had U Magazine, we had a guest chef named Kirk Lines. And in every month's episode of U Magazine, we had a cooking video with him in the kitchen. And that more than doubled any other category in the magazine, which included your finances, your insurance, your health and wellness, et cetera. So I'm going cooking, talking about restaurants that you like, showing food that you like to cook. Everybody likes food. Up to you.
100%.
You're next.
And I'll give mine here in just a second, but I'll tack on one. One of my most engaged Facebook posts that I've ever done, and I've been on Facebook since like 2006 or 7, was we posted a graphic that had all the places that kids eat free, like Monday to Wednesday. And people loved that thing. So food and restaurants
that's a brilliant one. That's a brilliant one. Just doing a video on that, going, hey, I just wanted to give you some great information on something. I did a little, scouring of the landscape in our local market here. And did you know that on Mondays, this, on Tuesdays, that? I mean, that's value. Again, going back to the formula, bring value. Okay, you're next.
I'm going to say product comparison videos, because so often, I'm thinking about people that want to create content, whether you're in and out of the industry. We're in the social media age. Everybody's recording content. You could do product comparisons between phones or cameras or lighting or computers or microphones or anything in your house you could do. And that is a huge amount of engaged content, both in short form and in long form, is just comparing and sharing your experiences on products that you use in your daily life.
So you just triggered a perfect example for me. So I mentioned in the beginning of this conversation about travel being hell right now. And I do a lot of traveling, and there were some real mishaps going to Europe with people losing bags. And A new product that I have that would be a great example of a video you could do is AirTags. Do you know what an AirTag is?
I do. Yeah.
So these Apple AirTags that cost, 25 bucks, and you put it inside your bag, and then you can track on your phone. How many times when you're getting on an airplane are you stressed out? I wonder if my bag made it onto the flight. Now you know if your bag made it. And then if for some reason, which happened to us in Europe, there were people that didn't get their bags, but they were clearly on the flight and they ended up in some storage facility, a block away. They were able to lead them directly to their bag because their phone was telling them with the GPS exactly where it was at. So that would be a great example of a little product that you could do a quick video on that everybody in your database would find to be valuable, or anybody in your social network. All right, I'm going kids. I think anything that has to do with family, anything that has to do with, there is this book, you've probably heard of it before. I just lost my recollection of the name of it. Bernstein Bear Moving
Bernstein
Day.
Bears.
Bernstein Bear Moving Day. Okay.
Yeah.
So like John Downs, who's a client of mine, he put out a video about this book, about like, hey, if you're going to be, moving anytime soon, it could be a stressful time for the kids. I want to share this book with you. You do a quick little video on that. Anybody in your database that has young kids is going to appreciate it. So the key to a parent's heart is through their children. You do something nice for their kids, they definitely want to reciprocate. All right, we'll finish up with you. You got one more for us?
I'm gonna you just talked about your trip to Italy. I'm gonna say travel. We all go like on trips. I don't think people talk enough about what they did, how much it cost, how you could do it on the cheap, how you could do it a little more expensive. I think that those are some of the most interesting ones. That's a hot button for me, as I love to travel. My wife and I have a cool book that's like all these cities in the United States that you can do on like a day and a half or 2.5 days, like just on a weekend or whatever. And, we love coming up with cool ideas. And I think travel, just sharing your experiences, talking about cool places, stuff that, is economical or quick to do. I'll finish up with travel.
You're not going to get an argument from me. That's my favorite topic besides baseball. I had done sometimes on retreat, we will do like these masterminds around hacks and just like what people are using in their everyday life to, hack time and all of that. And I shared something 1.5 years ago that just blew everybody's mind, which is how I've been using for 25 years now the American Express membership rewards point system in a way that gets me a lot of free travel, but in a way that nobody really knows about. And it's not because I have some secret information. It's just that people make the mistake of utilizing their points incorrectly, and they don't maximize and leverage those points in the capacity that they're capable of being leveraged. So you just think about doing a quick video on that and sending it out to your social network. People would find that to be incredibly valuable. So in summary, and then I want to transition. So to get your brain, spinning in this direction, I want to talk about marketing other than social media, just to see if you have any feedback there. But in summary, I hope that everybody is picking up on this theme and this formula of it's about adding value. Don't fall into the trap of thinking you know what is valuable. Don't fall into the trap of thinking that it has to be about 30-year fixed rate mortgages and prepaying your principal. I mean, it can be that. There's nothing wrong with being an expert in that area. But what we're doing is we're saying, hey, what do you need to do to buy brain cells? How can you be unique and different? How can you take some of the pressure off yourself? Talk about things that are actually easy for you to talk about on camera because you're actually doing it in your life. Like I could talk about the American Express point system like right now if you wanted me to rattle it off, and I could do it tight because I've shared it with so many people. So it doesn't have to be so hard, and yet it can accomplish your objective. So let's go to other forms of marketing. What do you got for us? Anything that you find to be effective?
Yeah, for most people that I coach, that I talk to, in addition to social media, it's your database. And I think we have a misnomer that our database has to be just past clients or just realtors. Your database needs to be everybody that you know or have come in contact with. If you think about your phone, most people have a few hundred numbers in their phone, or plus a few hundred people on, Facebook. Let's say that you combine them and you have 500 people that you could put a name, a phone number, an email address into a database. Well, statistically, they say people are in the market to buy a home once every 10 years, which I think is a super conservative number, but we'll just run with that because it's easy math. That means if you've got 500 people, you now have 50 people a year that are in market. that you actually know very well. That's 4 potential deals on a monthly basis, or a little over 4. So having a database, there's some justification on, if you don't have one, why you need to start one. And the other one that's a little more maybe advanced, if you have a closed client database, is semi-annual and annual reviews. Just taking the time to reach out and say, hey, how are things going? I remember when we spoke last, here's some things that were going on, or how did, Timmy do on his, his baseball little league championship, whatever. Having some conversations, and then letting them know that one of the things that I told you whenever we were working with you towards closing is that we wanted to continue to follow up with you and see how life was changing, so that if anytime you need something, we can make that process as streamlined and efficient as possible. And the other part of that is finding what other professional service providers do they have in their life. Those CPAs, those attorneys, those financial advisors that you can then connect with over a mutual client. I also have some other clients that may not have a financial advisor. Let's have coffee and have a conversation. I think semi-annual and annual reviews with your clients is one of the most profound things, because of the relationships and referrals that it can create from it, but because it's your opportunity to follow through with a commitment that you made, that you weren't just a transactional sales loan officer, that you were about creating value, that you were about relationship. And a lot of other things can come out of that, but you don't do it for those reasons. You need to do it to add value, to see how they are, to check up on them. And so many people don't do them because they're not sure what to say, or they feel weird, or whatever else. And we just need to go be human. We need to reach out to people and have conversations and see how we can help. I always go back to Michael Mayer and the 7 levels of communication, his generosity generation that he did. I think he did 360 deals in 1 year as a realtor, all by referral, because all they did instead of lead generation is they did generosity generation. They just reached out, their whole team, a couple hours a day, and just try to find out what people needed. Do you need reservations somewhere this weekend? Does grandma need her yard mowed? Does so-and-so, need help with something? And they just reached out and helped people. And I think that's the way we need to approach our database and these annual reviews. And the other things are going to be an incredible byproduct of it, so long as you approach it, to your point earlier, like you actually care, as opposed to, I'm reaching out because I want you to send me a referral for another deal.
Well, that's the key thing. So the reason that most people don't do annual reviews is because, or for that matter, stay in touch with their past database in any kind of a consistent way. And you hear the objection of, well, everybody in there is at 3.25%. Yeah, but that's because you have the wrong goal.
That's right.
If your goal is to get a deal, then you're not going to make the calls. If your goal is to nurture a relationship and to create an annuity income for yourself, which is exactly what will happen for many, many years to come. And it's not like what we sell here generates $10. What we sell here generates thousands of dollars. So if you just stay in touch with them and don't make the goal getting a deal, but make the goal, I'm contacting them to nurture the relationship and see how I can help, and ask questions based upon what needs might you have in your life right now that I can help you with, all of a sudden, every call is a successful call. You can't screw that call up. If your objective is to call and see how you can help, you could never mess that up. Where you can mess it up is if you make it about you. Because if you make it about you and you don't get what you want, then you're going to stop doing it. And that's the real problem.
Yeah.
The annual reviews, or something else you said that I want to hit on. I couldn't agree with you more, by the way. Just the database in general. I mean, okay, so I think, and this is a theory, but somebody actually said this to me, a marketing consultant said this to me the other day, so it validated something I've been thinking for quite some time. I think there's a huge missed opportunity right now in not investing a little bit of your money into snail mail.
Oh, 100%.
I think that's go back to what we were talking about being different. How about getting creative and using snail mail with like a postcard that has a really attractive, something that grabs your attention, and then a QR code. Scan this real quick, because let's just hypothetically say it, like, hey, I just got back from, I'm not saying this one is the one I would send. I'm just pulling this out of my hip pocket, but Did you guys go on any vacations, this summer? Did you have trouble in your transfers with luggage? Recently, I just had a problem at the airport, and I've got a really cool thing that I'm going to share with you. Scan this QR code, and then you've got your video on the air tags. And I'm not saying
Right.
that's the one I would go with, but I'm just using that as an
Absolutely.
example. You know, how do you get people's attention? Is I think a key thing with marketing. Well, as we
Yeah.
said, you get their attention by being different. You get their attention by going to places where there isn't a lot of noise.
Yeah.
There's a lot of noise on social media. There's a lot of competition on social media. Their mailbox has less and less noise
That's right.
as the years go by. Now, yeah, you got to be willing to invest money. It costs money to send postage, but postcards aren't that expensive. So that's why I was suggesting that. All right.
Got a quick one real quick.
Yeah.
It's a super tactical example that's pretty creative, I thought. The short backstory on this is years ago in my early 20s, some friends and I were at a kind of a beachside, bar and grill kind of place. And they had all these coasters that they laid out. And on the front of the coaster, it said, "Do not turn this over." Well, what are you going to do? I mean, come on, you're going to flip the coaster over.
Don't touch this plate. It's hot.
That's right. Exactly. So on the back side of it, it was just like a local car dealership of some kind. And that stuck with me for years. So recently, when I'd started a production team for a little while there, and our team name was Your Brew Team. And Brew is an acronym for Build Real Estate Wealth. But I'd opened up a craft beer brewery. I love coffee. There was a little bit of a double entendre there. And we'd come up with this idea of working with a lot of local coffee shops and local breweries. And that was one of the things we were going to do, is create coasters and put the logo of that business on them, purchase them for them, put the logo on there. And at the bottom, just put, "Do not turn this over." And on the back was going to be a QR code that went to our home bots, where they could sit there and scan and see what their value of their home was worth, or any platform similar to that. Because then we're giving them something of value. And then if they want to unlock the rest, then they can put their email address in and opt in, and you can create some attention, or you can send it to a website, or to your point, a video. But it was a super creative thing that the owners that we talked to just loved the idea, because it was something new and unique. Because as people are sitting there drinking beer, drinking coffee, it was a new way to show up, but not have our logo all over their business, if you will. And so I also think that right now, when you talk about being places people aren't, direct mail is a huge one. All we get is windowed envelopes. Anytime you can get something that's not a windowed envelope is going to be huge. Another one I would say is blogging.
Yes.
We are spending so much time on video. I challenge people, and it's something we're going to start doing a lot better of, is just old school blogs. Talk about topics that adds value. We've listed dozens of ideas of things that you can talk about, or themes of things you could talk about. And the one little tip I want to give that's a pretty tactical one is, if you have a blog on a website or your website, don't just take that link and post it natively, or post the link on social media platforms. You're not going to get any traction for it. You're trying to take eyes off of their platform. Take that content that you did in your blog and literally paste it natively as a long form post in Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram or wherever you want to do it. You don't have to trick someone to going to your website to read your blog. If they read this post and like it, they're going to go to your website anyway. But I think, especially now, because video is so saturated, there's a huge opportunity for really good, 600-800 word blogs that are digestible, especially, and we may open up a rabbit hole here, but with, Bard and Chat GPT, there's a huge opportunity to have a lot of written content at your fingertips and put your own spin on it, and really create a lot of attention on topics that people actually give a rip about.
Yeah. So I've been using chat a lot. As I actually just listened to AI podcast yesterday that was quite long. And yet I got some good value out of it. And one of the things that the expert that was being interviewed was talking about was that he wants you to think of AI as if you were given a bunch of really smart, inexperienced graduate students to work with you in your business.
Right.
How would you go about training them? What would you have them do? Because that's essentially what you have at your disposal. And one of the things that I've been doing now for 4 or 5 months is I use chat to just proof and edit whatever writing I do. So when you talk about blogs, you could write the blog and then I'm not personally a fan of the other way around, which is where I start to feel like it gets a little greasy, is to just write me a blog post on,
Right.
artificial intelligence, and then chat does it, and then you put your name on it and try to pretend like it's you. To me,
Not a
that just
fan either.
doesn't line up with my values. But I will write something that I feel passionate about, and then I'll insert it into chat and have it reword it and edit it and clean it up to where it reads a bit better than my layman writing ability provides. But I love that idea too. And I agree with you. I think that, again, the theme that we're talking about here is just being different, capturing people's attention by being different. I want to conclude this topic by giving a quick little formula, and then I want to ask you a question about something entirely different. So I've said for many years, but recently, about a year and a half ago, I started saying this when the market started to turn, is that this is the market where real loan originators are made. And what I mean by that is that in a refi market is void of creativity, or at least the creativity and resourcefulness that an originator has to deploy is sequestered really predominantly to one area, which is, how do I scale my team? How do I create greater efficiency within my system to be able to fund as many loans as possible, which is super important. But then when the market shifts like it did, now we have a market where if you have the dedication and are putting forward the time, you'll become 2 to 3 times the loan officer that you were before the market turned, because you will figure out how to creatively generate business. You will figure out how to cultivate new referral partner relationships. You will figure out how to more deeply connect with your past client database. You'll figure out alternative products to sell. You'll figure out how to structure loans that you probably would have never even taken a look at when you had 65 loans in your pipeline. And on the back side of that is a you that is 3 times as dangerous as you were before you went into it. So the formula was creativity generates growth, growth generates an improvement and a more self-actualized loan originator. But without the requirement for creativity, left to our own devices, we flatline. We're just stagnant. We phone it in. We do the same thing over and over. We make a lot of money. And this is a time for an originator to really dig in and get creative and to try some of the things we're talking about. So
good.
What are the common denominators of top originators in the mortgage business? They're well scripted. They have a system for marketing themselves that generates leads. They manage an effective database, and they have strong referral partner relationships. The other common denominator of many great originators is that they have a business and life plan, a roadmap, a guide for them to achieve success, and they have an ally, a coach, who assists them in the successful implementation of that plan. Performance Experts Performance Accelerator private one-on-one 1-year coaching program is now accepting applications. This is my company, and these are my certified coaches that specialize in the mortgage business. Go to www.mortgagecoachingnow.com and click on Get a Coach, or go to the show notes and click on the link that's provided in this episode. Now let's get back to the show. One of the things that I'm most impressed by with you in our conversation that we had when I was on your show, I noticed right away when I saw you on camera, was that you had lost a lot of weight. And I would love for you to talk a little bit about this, and also spend some time talking about the mindset, the discipline, the morning routine.
Yeah.
I think this is very valuable for people to hear.
I appreciate that.
And congratulations, by the way.
Well,
I'm really
thank
happy
you.
for you. Yeah.
It's been interesting because growing up, my whole life, I was always an athlete, 3-sport athlete. My dad played college baseball, so I kind of grew up with a baseball in my hand. We have a shared love of baseball. Also loved basketball, tried a lot of other different things. In my 20s, I was a kind of an amateur triathlete. I did a lot of sprint and Olympic distance triathlons, and ultimately wanted to do a half Ironman and Ironman. Had gotten married, had kids young, went through a divorce. And whenever I got remarried quite a few years later, really just focused on family and career. And I don't remember making a conscious decision, but my health and fitness just kind of just put a back into the back burner. And I always stayed active, but wasn't good about fueling my body the right way. And the interesting part is that, at least for me, as I started doing a podcast and people started networking with different people and knowing more people within the industry, they always knew what I referred to as Fat Phil, where mentally I still saw myself as this athletic guy, but that wasn't what it was. And so really where the turning point was is I had flown to Atlanta to I think it was September 2020 to record a segment for Sales Mastery with Todd Duncan. It was virtual that year. And my buddy Dustin Brome, who's on the real estate side, has the Massive Agent podcast. We'd gone down there to do a podcasting segment, and we took some pictures. And especially after COVID, because we were all indoors eating all the groceries that we had bought, or at least I did, I looked at that picture and I thought, damn, like what happened? Like that's really me. And I knew immediately that was not going to stand. So I kind of started on this journey where I wanted to start losing some weight, but I still didn't. I don't want to say I didn't know how, because of course I knew how, but things weren't happening the right way. To make a long story short, I realized that I had severely low testosterone, and there were some stereotypical things that I thought came with low testosterone that I wasn't experiencing, but I didn't realize there was about 10 other things of fatigue, loss of lean muscle mass, headaches, fat gain, all these types of things. And I went in and got tested, and the range of where my testosterone was below an elderly man.
Were you
And
like
so
in the 200s, or?
I was 256.
That's
Yeah.
pretty low. Yeah.
Yeah, it was for those that don't know, the range is between about 300 and 1100, give or take. And I was supposed to be around 800, and I was 256. And so I started getting my hormones right, which kind of opened up in my mind. I felt like I was on rocket fuel. I started feeling normal again. And so I'm sharing the story the long way because it was a progression of decisions. Like, okay, the decisions, I'm going to get this right. Now I'm going to start putting some action to it. I'm going to eat a little better. Okay, now I need to get my hormones in check. Now I want to be focused on not what a number is on a scale, but am I healthy? Do I feel good? Can I actually go out and do the activities that I want to do? And that started a snowball effect to where I started getting up a little earlier, which I always loved the mortgage business because you could, or I could get up around 7:30, be in the office 8 or 8:30, and I was still in before most of my realtor referral partners. And I started getting up about 6:00, and which was pretty early for me. And I kind of had that routine for a while, and I was, losing weight and gotten, the food habits in line, started adding some daily habits and non-negotiables. And I saw a reel by a guy named Josh Metal. And I actually messaged him about this at the time.
Oh no!
And dude was getting up at like 4:30 and doing his meditation and his ice bath and all this other things. And I'm a pretty competitive guy, and I remember thinking, here I was patting myself on the back for getting up at like 6:30. Josh is waking up at 4:30, and I remember thinking, I can do that. So I progressively took my alarm clock further back. To where now I wake up about 4:15, 4:30 every morning. And I do that because I don't like waking up early. When I do, that's a win. Then when I go to the gym, I'm already tired. Who wants to work out? But then I work out, that's a win. Listen to podcasts, getting my mind right, that's a win. Go home and have a protein shake instead of a bagel or a bowl of cereal, that's a win. And I start stacking these wins every single day. And this is something I spend a lot of time talking about and coaching on, because our daily habits are going to determine our actions and our mindset. I think mindset's the most important thing because it controls our attitude and our actions. And those are the only two things we actually have control over. And another important thing is our mind only distinguishes between wins and losses, but not how big they are. So if you go into a client call or that first appointment and it just doesn't go very well, or you just bomb it, then it's okay, we'll have an L, but I made my bed. So they cancel each other out, but I still have all this momentum. And
Yeah, that's the key. That's the key word is momentum. I mean, that's what I'm hearing you describe as a situation where you're creating small victories that add up to momentum, and you're allowing yourself to focus on the victories. See,
100%.
that's a really key thing. A lot of people left to their own devices, all of us left our own devices, the day ends and we only look back on the things that we didn't get done or that we didn't do well, because that's the way that the competitive mind functions. So we have to reverse engineer that, right? We have to give ourselves an opportunity to focus on a daily basis on what are the things that I'm proud of that I got done today. And that's, it's like, do you want to be fed by the carrot or the stick?
Right.
At the end of the day. So keep going, but I'm really glad that you went to the place of momentum. Keep going.
Yeah, well, so the other kind of part of it for me is momentum also creates motivation. And I think people miss that, is we can trick our minds into creating that momentum and in turn motivation. And an easy example is if you're heating something up in the microwave and it boils over, well, then you wipe down that little round pan in the middle. And you're like, well, I'm in here, I'm going to clean out the inside of the microwave. And then you're wiping down the counters next to it. And all of a sudden you've cleaned the entire kitchen. And now you're thinking about, touching up paint on the walls. There's that snowball effect because that momentum creates that motivation. And the other thing it creates is confidence. Confidence is not a personality trait. Confidence is a skill that we learn. And you learn that confidence by exactly what you said, celebrating those wins and realizing even those little losses or those little failures or those speed bumps, roadblocks, whatever you want to call them, all of a sudden you realize they're not so bad. You're able to overcome them. You have all these other things going for you that you then feel different. And that mindset changes and your confidence is higher. Well, then all of a sudden you execute at the tactics at an even higher level, which is what I'm very passionate about, helping people execute whatever they're doing at the level that they're capable of. And that all starts with daily habits, non-negotiables that create that momentum, that motivation and confidence. And we now are getting better results and better conversions. And it does start from a physical place. I don't think we talk enough about it in business. You can't have a growth mindset, a positive mindset, be in a good headspace, be in a place of joy if you physically feel like crap. Like it's almost impossible
100%.
to do.
Food. It's kind of crazy as to how much people don't really think about, the importance of food. I mean, it's like putting bad food in your body is like putting, corn oil in your car. I mean, it's like it's the fuel that our body runs on, and it drives our hormonal reactions, it drives mood, it affects sleep, it affects, blood insulin levels. I mean, all of it. And it's like you give yourself a hell of a lot better fighting chance to be successful and have some bounce in your step in business and have the right energy that you're bringing into a business engagement if you're eating well. And if you feel good about yourself and if you like the way you look in the mirror when you get up in the morning. How much weight did you lose?
Down about 80 pounds from my heaviest. It was right around the time of that picture. I was down a little bit more, but then I went from a lot of cardio to a lot of weight training. So body fat percentage is coming down. But again, anymore, I don't focus as much on the number on the scale as much as I get regular blood work every 90 days. I, pay a lot of attention to, the nutrients that I'm consuming and the supplements. And I really the amount of protein. I really focus on macros. I consume a large amount of protein on a daily basis. I also consume a lot of carbs. I'm more of a low fat diet, but still, some good fats. But something that you said, really resonated when you're talking about, moving your body and the releasing of hormones. It's interesting when someone's in a bad headspace or in a bad mood, I challenge them. Go for a walk, go bust out a workout, go get your blood oxygenated. That oxygenated blood goes to the brain, releases, dopamine, endorphin, serotonin. All of a sudden your mood changes because you change something physically. And part of that for me is I have daily habits, but I also have non-negotiables. And non-negotiables is something you said at one of the very first podcast recordings we did well over 5 years ago, is you called them irrevocable promises to self. And though that is huge in kind of the discipline that I have learned, is there's a handful of things that are a mix of personal and professional that I do every single day. One of them is I have a certain number of outbound text messages or DMs that I reach out to people that's part of my business. I have an hour that I have to spend learning and growing for me on a daily basis. And then I have a certain amount of time that I spend outside in the actual fresh air. That's more of a quiet time, prayer, meditation with no electronics, where I'm just kind of there. Like you just kind of tune everything else out. Now, I have a lot of other daily habits in terms of when I wake up and working out and, spiritual, mental, physical, emotional, financial, all these different activities. But there's a few things that are non-negotiables. They're irrevocable promises to self, because those are the things that if nothing else happened in the day, I'm moving the needle in my life, in my business. And I really, really, really can't emphasize that enough for people, that in mortgage, we know the formula of, here's the income I want to make. So at that comp plan, here's the volume I need. And my average loan amount, here's the units. And we know that formula all the way down to the smallest degree. But why don't we do that in any other area of our life? Why don't we say, this is the North Star? This is something that I want to achieve with my spouse, with my family, physically, whatever. And then break that all the way down into daily habits and non-negotiables. So now what happens is we're proactive. We no longer have to be reactive in our life. We wake up and we have our calendar, we have our daily habits, we have our non-negotiables, and we can go through life with a great attitude, with a great mindset, with a sense of peace and confidence, knowing every single day we're doing what we need to do. And now your focus is going on and caring about people, going on and helping people, but your business is still growing because you've changed the frame and the narrative about how you're wanting to do that thing. And that changed my life.
First of all, I'm happy for you. And I'm glad I asked that question. Thank you for sharing all of that. The thing that I would add is just that we have to take seriously the importance of the commitments that we make, the promises that we make to ourselves. I think a lot of people overpromise to themselves a myriad of things that they're going to do. And what ends up happening is you start to erode the relationship with yourself when you start breaking commitments. There's no escaping it. It's deeply ingrained into our subconscious. What I heard you describe is a situation where Phil Treadwell just started deciding to make commitments to himself that he would not break. And as a result of that, trust is built. So I would imagine that now, where you sit now, when you make a commitment to something in your deepest levels of your subconscious, I'm going to get it done because I'm true to my word with me. And I think that there are a lot of people out there that don't really spend a lot of time thinking about the commitments they make. They overcommit, or they commit to things that they really don't want to be doing for reasons that you articulated, that Tony Robbins said, our deep desire to be liked, loved, accepted, seen, all of these types of things. But it's a slippery slope. Mm-hmm. Once we start making commitments and we start losing our trust in ourselves, it starts to infiltrate its way into all aspects of our life. And one of the great areas, of course, that you don't have full dominion over the mortgage business. That's just the bottom line. The Federal Reserve has way too much of a hand in the equation, as do a whole variety of other issues. But the one thing that you can control is the food you eat, whether you get that workout in, whether you have that hour of prayer or meditation, whether you decide to connect with yourself and contemplate and just be, as you described. Those are things that are fully within your dominion. And getting into a rhythm of following through on those things and building up that momentum of trusting yourself then parlays into all aspects of your life, including your business.
It's so good. And I will say this. I love that you clarify, because it's something that I'm going to take away from this conversation, do a lot more of understanding what it is of this is a daily habit in terms of this is a goal that I want for myself versus those commitments you've made. Because the way that I do it is I have 18 things. I have categories: spiritual, mental, physical, emotional, financial, and then other. So there's 6 categories, and I have 3 things in each category that are habits that I try to attain. I rarely check off every single one every single day, but there are 3 things that I do every single day that are my non-negotiables, because those are a bite-sized thing that are just a part of my life. And so I love you clarify that we can't set a goal that we almost set ourselves up for failure that we say we're committing to, and then in turn, lose that trust. So I love the way you framed that, and I appreciate you sharing.
Thank you. Now I'm going to make you feel really good. Are you ready? This is a little secret between us and everybody else who's listening. So I was with Josh Metal for 12 days straight in Italy, and he didn't do his morning routine most of those mornings.
I love that. That's good stuff. That's good stuff.
There were far too many mornings where the red wine that he had consumed the night before had gotten the best of him, and
little Chianti came to haunt him.
Yeah, he was rolling into the breakfast table much later than he normally would. So,
that's funny. That's funny.
I know he'll listen to this, so that'll be fun for him to hear this at the end. Hey, Phil, thank you so much for just your wisdom and your presence and the value that you brought. This was like super easy and graceful. And I love how we just kind of popcorn back and forth and let it organically unfold. I'd love to have you on the show again sometime. My sense is you have a whole lot more to offer, and congratulations on all your success.
Well, thank you very much. And I can't say enough about how much you've impacted my life and business, from being the second recording that I ever did on my podcast, and have come back on subsequent times. I learn so much every time we have a conversation, and the time that I, coached with you and Scott over there. You guys have had a huge impact on my life and business, and I can't thank you enough for what you're doing for our industry. And man, I'm just excited to be able to collaborate any way we can.
You're so welcome. And Scott says hi. I told him that I was having our show today, and he wanted me to say hello to you.
Yeah, he's a good dude. Love Scott.
Right on, buddy. Thanks so much again. And thank you to everyone for tuning into this episode of the 360 Experience. We hope that you enjoyed it.